4 couples and 1 single lined up in the next 4 weeks, and I'm going to do some interviewing. So I sent them all the questions ahead of time for the interview, and we want to learn, live their journey. First of all, some of these people may have not even been come from a Christian home and different things. Maybe they have, all this sort of stuff. We want to find out their journey. Now, the first couple up tonight that I'm going to interview, that we're going to have, this is going to be the message, and we're going to have a bit, I want to say something before we have communion tonight, is Wes and Rachel. Now, the reason I chose Wes and Rachel to be first was, first of all, because I knew they'd do it, number one, say yes. But second of all, they're such crazy football fanatic fans that we didn't know when the Rough Riders were going to have this home playoff game. It turns out it's next week instead of the week after, and then there's the Grey Cup, right? So who knows where Wes and Rachel are going to be? They might go to, where is it? Edmonton to watch the Grey Cup. Who knows? And so I have sent them some questions. We can bring that. So Wes and Rachel, will you come up here and join me up here? So, hey, you know what? I love each and every one of you so much, and everyone that comes up here, of course, I say some good things about them, and so I love Wes and Rachel so much as well. Wes dragged Rachel out kicking and screaming to our very first service in January of 2015.
Truth.
Truth. And let's see, in April, Rachel led our first service at Cornerstone.
No. At Cosmo.
At Cosmo. Yes, at Cosmo. That's right. Yes. That was April, and that was our first service that we did every night, and so we've been going every Sunday night since. We've missed one because of roads and stuff like that in those years. So every journey is different, and so here's what I'd like you to get out of this even tonight. Oh yeah, so take it away from me. See, like it. No. He's got the volume now, so he can shut my mic off if he wants to. I don't like that. Every journey is different, and even within marriages, journeys can be different. I gotta find my questions here. And so I'm hoping that even though couples are journeying together, that there's little differences in your journeys as you come together. And so I have a list of 7 questions, and someone said to me this morning, Kevin, you lied. There's questions within the questions.
Yes, there is.
There's like 14 questions. I'm like, no, there's only 7. The rest are just subtitles. And so I'll let them fight out over who goes first and who goes second. And but the first question that I have tonight is this. It's funny. We did this morning, and it looks like, Wes, do you have notes?
No, I just have the questions here.
Oh, you have the questions. Oh, okay. Because the husband this morning, he came up, he's like, I just decided to shoot from the hip, and she had notes, right? She had prepared notes, and so however you want to do it is good. So, journey of grace. We're all in this together. What does that look like? And you're not alone. That's the big thing that I want to get out of this whole thing, is that you are not alone. No matter where your journey in grace is right now, you're not alone. So, whoever wants to answer this first. The first question is this. Tell us what growing up looked like. And what I mean by that, did your parents take you to church? What kind of church did you attend? What was your experience like as you grew up?
Okay, looks like I'll go first. I'm just shooting from the hip here too, so just going to tell a little story. Growing up, we did go to church. My parents took us to church every Sunday. And I remember moving through, going to different kinds of churches actually. We didn't go to the same church my whole youth, so it was kind of interesting. The one church that I remember the most is, it was a Mennonite church, because I grew up Mennonite, and the men, for the most part, were kind of on one side, and women on the other, and children, whatever. And I remember it because it was very traditional, and that's how I feel like I grew up, very traditional. and singing hymns exclusively. I don't sing well. My wife laughs at me when I sing, and then I sing all the louder, just because.
That makes me happy.
Just because. And so for the most part, going to church wasn't exciting as a child, as a youth. And as soon as I could, I basically stopped going to church.
Wait a minute, there's question 2.
Oh, sorry about that.
Peter.
Yeah.
Did your parents take you to church? Yeah. What kind of church? So yeah, I grew up Mennonite, so we went to Mennonite churches, very traditional.
Yeah.
So, as well, I grew up in a Christian home, and I grew up in a Mennonite church. I attended the same church my entire life up until we got married and moved away. So I remember a lot of things about our church as it grew size-wise, building-wise. I was baptized there, married there, went to youth there, Sunday school. And so as each of us grow, age-wise, we also grow in our beliefs in church, and my parents don't believe the same way that they did when we were growing up. However, I remember this was in 1989, and we had Sunday school, so there were many times when there would be church in the morning and then church in the evening. And that church in the evening, I believe, if I have this memory correct, it was always the last Sunday of the month, I think it was. I could be wrong, but there was a specific Sunday that we always had evening service. And at this point, I'm in my later teens, and I am a fanatical football fan already then. I don't even remember not being a football fan. And so there was church Sunday evening, and being my folks were very committed. And I don't hold that against them, but they were very committed. And because I was also a church pianist, I played piano a lot of Sundays, and so it was my job that I was up that night. And we had family over that Sunday. Well, you know, the game starts at 5, right? And it ends at 8. Well, church starts at 7. Guess where I was? The Riders were in the Grey Cup, and I was in church. And they won. I still remember that. I didn't get to see them win. My uncle showed up later. I turned around, I remember, this is so clear. I remember looking around at him, and he looked at me and he went like this. I was like, yes! But we had to go to church. That was, when there was church, and we went. And my parents have changed, you know, some of the things that in their traditional ways but that's how I grew up. If there was church, you went. If there was youth, you went. If there was clubs, you went. And there was a period of time where my dad was like, we don't do anything on Sundays. We don't go to restaurants. We don't buy gas. We don't do anything. And that was a part of growing up. And so church was church. And, you know, at that point, I was upset that I had to go to church, but we went to church. And whether or not we liked it or not.
So that was 1989, because that's when the Riders won the Grey Cup.
Right? That was one of them.
Yeah, well, the only one that you would have been a teenager playing the piano.
True that.
You know, we went to church all of our lives, Sunday morning, Sunday night. My parents were really committed because my dad was the pastor. Wasn't the football I missed? I missed Disney at 6 o'clock. You know, and then you had to go to. Anybody remember when Disney was on at Sunday nights? And then did anybody have to miss Disney to go to church?
Yes.
Yeah? No? Okay. Was anybody as upset about that as I was that I had to miss? Okay, good. There's a couple of us. Disney to go to church. All right. So as you grew older and could make your own decisions, was church an important part of your life? Or did you possibly walk away from church? Maybe you didn't even walk away from church, but what were your thoughts about the church and God at that time as you kind of got older?
I was trying to think about this and trying to think what my thoughts were. All I really remember was when I was probably around 16, all the way till I was probably 22. It's a pretty hazy time, those 6 years. I just remember growing disinterested in what church was about and what was happening there. And I just remember going, no. And I don't remember my parents forcing me to go. I don't remember, actually I don't even remember if I really went much. It's kind of hazy, and maybe I should talk to my parents about this, but if I went, I was completely disengaged because there's nothing connecting me to church, to God, or anything. I just checked out. And I did that for at least 6 years.
Okay, it's interesting that you say that because I had a coffee with a guy that's doing research for another denomination 3 weeks ago. And the research that they've shown now is 73% of churched kids leave the church. They don't necessarily leave Jesus, but they leave the church because they become disengaged.
I don't remember saying, oh, this God thing is just for the birds.
Right.
I don't remember anything like that. I just basically checked out. Like I wasn't against any of it. I just checked out.
Right, and that's what this research is saying. The 27% of kids that actually stay in church are kids that have been heavily involved in Bible camp and on short-term missions, is what this research is saying. Almost 100% of the 27% have been in Bible camps and on short-term missions where they've had this experience helping others and doing other things. So that's kind of an interesting statistic, and you came back, and so that's awesome. Rachel.
So I never left the church. I know, stop. So that doesn't mean anything, really. I never wanted to leave. All through my teens, I was the outcast in my class just because everyone knew what I stood for, and it wasn't a secret, right? So I was the one who would end up, coming to school Monday morning and be clueless as to what happened on the weekend. Everybody else was, had their inside jokes and all their things, and it was a really lonely place to be. But because I had a great relationship with my dad, that's what carried me through. And so for me, for different church, I never had a desire to leave, even though as traditional and, I guess you could say religious as how we were brought up. I never had a desire to leave. And so church has always been a part of my life. And I don't think that.
So what were your thoughts even towards God? You're talking about you had to go to church and miss a football game, or was there any conflict?
I never, thinking back now when you sent those questions, I don't remember feeling anger or frustration or resentment. I don't recall ever having those emotions or those feelings. And so church was just it got to the point, obviously, where I had to make choices for myself, but the transition from what my parents wanted me to do and from what I did there wasn't much difference between the two.
All right. So I know Wes already alluded to that for about 6 years there, that, it was just it was there. It wasn't that you left God or thought anything negative about God, but possibly this would be the question to ask. Was there a significant event in your life that made you more aware that Jesus is real and that I need him to be an active part of my life?
That's a great question, because I remember specifically, I don't remember the date, but I remember laying in my bed one night. I think I was 22 years old, and I remember thinking, what am I doing? It was just this, what are you doing? And maybe you could say that was God's voice saying, where are you?
Or it was my grandma praying.
Or it was her grandma praying for me. I don't know. What are you?
We didn't know each other then.
What are you doing? And I just, I guess I had to grow up a little bit. And I look at, during those years, I was just trying to find myself. I was trying to figure things out. And I remember just waking up or just laying there going, what are you doing? And then I just had this aha. It's like, I'm going to go to church. I'm going to get my life together. Because I just knew, I left, wasn't involved in church. It's like, that must be the place to get things together. So I was like, I got to go to church. And I got to go to a different church. And so I ended up going to her church. No specific reason. I don't know why I chose to go there. I just decided I knew some guys, I knew some people, I knew I needed to cut some ties with some of the guys I hung out with because they were not good for me. And I made some hard decisions that weren't super hard because I needed to put my life in a different direction. So I cut some ties. I knew some guys that went to that church, and I said, I'm coming. And I started going. And things kind of started to turn around right at that point.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm getting out of that is, like, at the age of 22, you're like, okay, I've been in church all my life, but now I don't believe this because my parents told me to believe this. I believe it for myself because it's real.
Yeah.
I imagine, Rachel, your experience is a little bit different because you never left the church, you're already there, but at the same point in time, or there's a time in all of our lives where we don't believe because our parents believed or because we were brought up in a Christian home. So when you think about that, was there a significant event in your life that made you more aware that Jesus is real and that you need him to be an active part of your life outside of your parents? That it's just like, I don't believe anymore because I've been taught, I go to church, and because my parents told me to, but I know this is real.
Well, that's a tough question because I don't have here is where it is. For me, I don't have...
Right, absolutely, that's why I asked it.
I don't have a here. I have events in my life that strengthened why I believe what I believe.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so, like, for me, it was more strengthening and keeping me where I wanted to be. And I think if I look back, I think I was pretty young when I made the choice that God was for me and not because of my parents. However, asking about is there a significant event? Well, this grace journey is a journey. It's not like here and then all of a sudden we're here. It's so many things that are in between, and my life has lots of those ones. So I could pick a number of different events that might say this was a stepping stone to this, and this was a stepping stone to this. But if I would pick one event prior to understanding and receiving grace, would have been when we were first married. We lived in Fort St. John, and I suffered my first miscarriage. That was not the first, but the second most traumatic event in my life. I look back and I go, oh man, I wish I was in grace at that point. That would have saved me so much pain. But I look back at that and I go, okay, well, I wasn't, but what happened is I didn't understand the goodness of God. I didn't understand the love of God. And I had to get through that. I had to reconcile that for myself. Because I couldn't understand why God would first give me a child and then take it from me. Because that's the path that I was growing up with, right? Okay, so, God gives you things and then God takes them away, right? And so you just have to work through those pains. And that sent me through depression. It was lonely. And I was up in Fort St. John, so it was me and him with some friends. We had a good church. And I did have a mentor lady who did help me through that. But that sent me through a depression that, had I understood how good God was, and that God wasn't the one who took my baby. And so it was a significant part of my life, just because I had to see God and that he loved me, and I had to receive that love. I didn't receive it in the grace way that we teach how God loves, but it was a new way for me to receive the love of God, and that's what brought me through to healing for that event in my life. And so I had a new understanding of God's love, but not near like where I am today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, and thanks for your vulnerability and sharing some of these difficult times. Question number 4, 7. Yeah, you're saying, you've already asked 7 questions. No, this is just question 4. Okay, so I'm assuming now that you're in that you're in a church setting, all right? You and your family together. What were the things that led you to the message of what I called extravagant grace? Because the truth is, every believer and every church believes in grace, that you're saved by grace and faith. And so when we were talking about this grace, some call it hyper grace, extravagant grace. I like the word extravagant. You can call it hyper if you like, but I'm assuming that you were in a church setting. What were the things that led you down this path to this extravagant grace message that you believe and that we're teaching today?
That to fully give that answer that question, it's a long journey. So Rachel's going to mention some things, but I'm just going to say one of the things that sticks out for me is while we were discovering that, you know what, there's way more to God than what we were learning in the past. There's way more there. The thing that really spiked into this extravagant grace was meeting Corey, actually. And I built them a fence in Warman, and we got into some conversations. We were already in the direction of faith and discovering who God is in our life. And then he gave me a CD, and he introduced me to Joseph Prince. And the CD was the same one that you listened to, 2009? 2007? 6? Is that 2005? Do you remember which one that was? That's when he was at the Grace. Yeah. He had at some conference in Australia
at Hillsong's church. It's 2005 Grace and Favor Conference.
The Grace and Favor Conference. I got a Grace and Favor CD from Corey, and I listened to this stuff, and I was just like I was already learning a little bit about, you know, that there's more to faith than what I had learned. But my eyes were like open, and I'm just like, who's Joseph Prince? And why would I want to listen to whatever to him? And it's like, whatever, I'll listen to it. And I listened to that CD, I don't know, 20 times. I'd go on a road trip a little bit, build a fence somewhere else. I'd throw the CD in, and my coworker, Brandon Sawatsky, then he'd be like, or even if I didn't put it, he goes, hey, put that Joseph Prince CD in. And so we put it in, we just listened to it, and I go, then I had to get his book. And then we started listening to podcasts, and it just began to really, that was the significant part of the journey that really began to open my eyes.
And for me, we have the same.
It's connected.
We have the same, but that's one point that he pulled out for him. And for me, it was much earlier. It was, and I've shared before my story about Haley and her sickness, and how we struggled through understanding why she wasn't healed. And so up until that point, church, you know, we weren't dissatisfied in church. We weren't looking. We weren't searching. Our spirits weren't hungry, I guess you could say. We did the church thing. You know, you went to church on Sundays, you lived your life through the week, maybe you had a Bible study or something, and you went to church again on Sundays, and you know, everyone's all good, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we were in that. So when she was sick, so she was born not well, but by the time she was 2, so we began to get hungry and anxious. Why are we not finding answers? And then the question was posed to us, oh, have you asked God? I was like, ask God? Why, you know, what? Because that was never a message that we grew up with. We did not grow up with Jesus was your healer message. And that was very foreign. That was a significant point. That was one of the turning points where we began to open up our eyes and be willing to see beyond what tradition was teaching us in our churches. And that journey brought us obviously to that point, and then that journey brought us to this point. But that would have been one of the significant ones for us when we started asking questions like, does Jesus really want to heal? Can I believe that Jesus wants to heal? And we discovered that yes, the answer is yes.
Amen. I believe that too. This could be the same. It could be different for each of you. But the next question is, what is one of the most significant truths you've learned as you've journeyed in grace? What's that? What's that truth you just keep coming back to as you've journeyed in this extravagant grace message?
So for me, the message is kind of tied together. It's how good God is. and tied together with that is how deeply he loves us. Because I thought about it, because he asked me, he says, so, well, what gets you so upset when Christians say this or do this? And I was like, when they start saying things like God did this and God was the reason for this, and that really makes my spirit sad and angry at the same time. And if I look back at that moment when I miscarried, it would have been such a good thing to know that God was good and that God wasn't the one who took my baby. That would have been something so good to know. And so for the message, how good God is, it anchors Christians to no end. And I don't understand. I don't understand how that is so angering to people. But regardless, that is the message that I want to keep speaking, is that God is good. And God loves you. And he's not out to get you.
That's good. I think for me, the thing that sticks out in my mind, the significant truth is that the work of Jesus is finished. Like, we don't have to fast and pray to get Jesus to move. We don't have to, make sure that we tithe to make sure that we're going to be provided for. We don't have to go and do this for things to happen to us. It's just done. And just rest and receive. It's just, there's no anxiety about, have I done everything I can so that God can do everything that he can? It's like Jesus did everything he can so that we could receive. And every problem that comes my way, I just get reminded, you know what? There's already been a way provided. Jesus he's done it all. It's finished. And it just really gives me joy, I think, daily. And I don't have any reason to be anxious or afraid. And I think that's the big one for me.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so good for both of you. I asked this next question because when I started on my grace journey, and I actually went to a Grace Walk conference in 2008, 9, something like that, my first Grace Walk conference in Waterloo. To that point in time, the only person I knew who was speaking grace was Joseph Prince. And I had no idea who any other grace teachers were. And I went to this conference, and I didn't realize Grace Walk was Steve McVeigh's ministry. I thought I was going to this Grace Walk conference for those walking in grace. That's what I thought it was. I had no idea that there was going to be just so few of us, and that's how I got involved with these guys and great connections. And so out of that, they were saying, well, have you heard of this guy? Have you listened to this guy? And I'm like, no, I don't know who that is. And they're shaking their heads like, where have you learned all this stuff? I'm like, I'm just reading the Bible. I didn't know I didn't know Andrew Womack. I didn't know all these other grace teachers. And there's quite a few of them out there now. It's a growing group of people that are preaching the grace message that have great resources. And that's why I asked this question, because I want you to grow as well. And if you check out some of these individuals that are mentioned, so I want you, maybe they're all the same for both of you, but maybe it's different as well. Give us a suggestion of one of your favorite grace teachers and why that person's one of your favorites today.
Well, I've already mentioned Joseph Prince. He kind of got me in on my journey, and but we all grow, and we all grow from faith to faith. And Joseph Prince, although I cherish his teaching and his book is amazing, I don't actually listen to him really today, which is kind of bizarre. Today, even though everything he says, I go, yeah, that's awesome. Today I read books by Paul Ellis. I just love that guy. He has been speaking truth into me, and everything I've read so far from him, I go, hey, I believe that too, and he just strengthens and what the word is saying, and it's just been such a blessing to me. And then on Facebook, I like a guy by the name of Kyle Butler. I think he's from the States somewhere, I don't know. And every time he says something on Facebook, I go, yes, I believe that, yes. And it just encourages me. So depending on what I'm doing, And then Sunday morning, we listen to Creflo Dollar. And I go, he just preaches up a grace storm, and I just love it. So I know you said one, but I just couldn't.
That's the thing. Paul Ellis, I've been watching and following him for a few years. He's got a website called escapetoreality.org, and he's got a number of books out there. I love Paul Ellis. I don't know Kyle Butler. I think he maybe shared some stuff on Facebook once in a while, but I don't really know him. So get these names down if you'd like, and check these people out. And of course, Creflo Dollar. Rachel.
Just hang on a second. Incidentally, Corey introduced me to Paul Ellis as well.
Really? You knew about Paul Ellis? I didn't know you knew about Paul Ellis. I thought I introduced you to Paul Ellis.
No, it was Corey. Sorry.
I can't even take the credit for that? Oh my gosh. I love Paul Ellis.
Is Paul Ellis your friend?
Now I'm just disappointed.
Is Paul Ellis your friend on Facebook?
I've never asked him to be my friend on Facebook. I don't ask people to be my friends on Facebook.
So for us, when we started our journey in discovering the truth about God's healing for our lives, Kenneth Copeland was a massive influence in that area. And in July of 2005, I sent Wes to Texas for his birthday with my brother to see a Kenneth Copeland convention, he was inundated with information. And I think that was probably the first, I don't know if that was the first time, but that was when we were introduced to Creflo Dollar through Kenneth Copeland's ministry. And we followed Kenneth Copeland until we got a hold of Joseph Prince, and we made a transition from Kenneth Copeland to Keith Moore to Joseph Prince. And as we were making our transition into Joseph Prince, Creflo Dollar made a transition himself. So when we started listening to him, he was just like all the other faith teachers. He was great. Then we fell in love with Joseph Prince and the message of grace. And I turned on, I don't know where it was, but I listened to a message from Creflo, and I was like, oh my goodness, he talks like Joseph Prince. I was like, what is going on? So then I kept tuning in, and he has, even from when he started the grace journey, he's not near where he was back then as he is today. And hands down, Creflo Dollar is my favorite.
And you're gonna find everybody else has their favorite. I mean, I'm like Wes in a way. Like Joseph Prince was my ultimate go-to guy, and I barely or ever listen to him anymore. I found some other teachers that I just love. You're gonna find out some of these. I fell in love with Barry Bennett. I don't know why, but I love that guy. He's I'm just gonna say something else here too. Through Creflo, Wes and I met a couple. Their names are Mike and Connie Smith. That's
so
right.
through Creflo, we met Mike and Connie. And Mike and Connie, see, he would be my second. And for different reasons. Mike and Connie were the reason, or how would you say it? They were
influence.
They were what helped us save our marriage. Put it that way. They had a massive influence on us, and we found them through Creflo as well. So
yeah, and I listen to some of them too. They're just all so good. All right, so I had to make this into a question. You have the mic. What words of encouragement would you like every person to hear tonight from you?
Okay, so it goes along still with what really drives me from within is how good God is. And I have to daily remind myself of that, because life's issues bombard us every day. Every day stuff is coming at us. And just because we're Christian, and just because we believe in grace, and just because we believe the goodness and the provision of God, doesn't mean that all of a sudden we become immune. Which is, when we first started this journey, it was almost like we thought that. It's like, now we believe this, we shouldn't have any problems, right? And that was not true. So just daily reminding myself of God's goodness and understanding that, you know what, things are going to come. Trouble is going to come, but that doesn't mean that all of a sudden something's wrong with you. Because, you know, typically that's the way things, like this bad thing is happening, and we go, okay, what did I do? What did I do wrong? Right? The guilt and shame, condemnation is just always the thing that keeps us from receiving the goodness of God. That's the reason. It's not our sin. It's the guilt that we feel from things that we do or say. And it's the condemnation that comes with it. That's the issue. It's not the sin. And just having to remind myself daily how good God is, and even the finished works of the cross. It's like, you know what? Jesus already paid for this. Why am I stressing? Why am I so upset about this? And why is it so hard to just breathe in? Like some of you, well, maybe have seen that one quote I put on my Facebook about, you know, air is free. It's everywhere. Breathe it in, breathe it out. That's what, you know, God's love is like. That's what the message of grace is like. It's just for you. His forgiveness is for you. You do nothing to receive it. It's there. And so, you know, just to encourage you, even wherever you're at, is that God is good, and if you didn't do anything to receive the issues that are coming your way, you just need to just step out and receive that goodness and go, you know what, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to believe this, and I'm going to shove guilt, condemnation aside and say no more.
That's good. One thing that I think that's big on my heart, my mind, I was just reading it the other day in 1 John, and it's a message that I think that we all need to understand more. In the church, I remember being taught all the time, you know, you got to love God. You know, you got to love Him with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, all your strength. And, you know, and I remember Joseph Prince preaching about this. He's saying, this message is just so, you know, you got to love God, you got to love God. And Joseph Prince says, you know what, like, I don't think I love God with my whole heart, mind, and strength. And I don't think I can. And then he says, and then the reality is that's not God's message for us today. If you read in 1 John 4, he says, it's not that you love me, but that I love you. That's the message. And so Old Covenant thinking is always, what can you do for God? Follow these commands and you will be blessed. Don't do this so that this bad thing won't happen to you. It's always about, the focus is you. And New Covenant, the focus is on Christ. What did He do for us? And it's His love for us that allows us to love others only the way that we can in Christ. And that's such a powerful word. And I just hear still too many times, too many churches and Christians thinking, well, you got to love God. You know, if you really love God, you would do this. And I was like, every time I hear that now, it's like, I'm not listening to that. I want to listen to things about, tell me how much God loves me, and get full of Jesus. And then once I'm full of Jesus, then you'll see love in action. But I'm not willing to conjure up any of my own love for God that they did in the Old Covenant. And it's the love of Christ that I receive every day. That's what I want to hear about. And that's why I dragged Rachel to this church to see Kevin. And the reality is Kevin is one of our favorite grace preachers too. Like, you know, we talk about, you know, all these people that we've never met, but we've got Kevin right here. And so he's, you know, strengthens us in the things that Joseph Prince and these other grace teachers have drawn us to, these parts of the Bible that speak truth to us. Now we've got this guy coming along and continuing to guide us in what we're learning. And so that's what I would like to say.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Wasn't that good? I know you're all in your different grace journey, and guess what? We may even have people in our grace journeys that are like, I'm not sure if I'm there yet, but I'm here. Or Wes and Rachel could even say, well, I'm not there yet, but I'm here. And we're all on this journey together. And so I want to encourage those watching on YouTube and by Facebook Live tonight that we're all on a journey. We're on a journey in grace. And wherever you are in your journey is okay. God loves you like nothing else. You are the object of God's immense love. And that's an amazing thing. Isn't that awesome? We appreciate you guys so much for praying for you. Remember to pray for Rachel's mom and dad. Just some little health things. We're going to pray for Elijah tonight. He's got hand, foot, and mouth things, so we're going to pray for him tonight. We're going to take communion. I don't know what to... yeah, we're going to take communion. Yeah, thank you guys so much. And yeah, give them and because I don't know how long this was going to go, and I don't know all these things, every week I'm going to have a little nugget to share with you. And tonight's nugget kind of goes along the lines of communion, because we talk about Jesus, and he's with his disciples, and he breaks the bread and says, "This is my body, which is broken for you," and he gives the wine, and he says, "This is my blood, which was shed for you. Every time you do it, think of me." Now, I was watching a debate this last week. One of my favorite guys. If you guys like debates with atheists or agnostics versus God, the best out there is a guy by the name of John Lennox. Anybody hear of John Lennox? Okay. And so I'm watching this debate that happened earlier this year with John Lennox, and the guy that he's debating brings up the passage of Jesus turning water into wine. And he's talking about something that he thinks it really means this. Do you really think Jesus turned water into wine? And blah, blah, blah. Goes on to, and John Lennox is sitting there, and then he comes back to this question. He's like, I know you can't believe in the actual turning of water into wine. But he says, for me, it's vital, it's important, and I want to share with you how. I want to share with you some things that I learned from this debate from John Lennox in John chapter 2 that I never, ever knew before. And it goes along, remember last week I said, I'm looking at the whole Gospels and the stories and the parables and the miracles that they put in. Why did they put this in? Why did they put these events in? So in John chapter 2, this is the first miracle that Jesus ever did, as he turns water into wine. And as we think about this, we're thinking about communion as well tonight. And on the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with us? My hour has not yet come." And his mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now, have you ever had mothers that just don't listen to you? It's like, some of you are mothers, and you're like, there's just not going to be any excuses here. You're going to do what I say. And you're put on the spot. As servants, whatever you do, you're just going to do it. Now, this is the next part of the story that I never really got, and then I had to do some research and find it out for myself. And so now, in verse 6, there were 6 stone water pots set there for the Jewish custom of purification. These were water pots. You know, I've always thought, these pots are filled with water and Jesus turned them into wine. But these were Jewish purification water pots. What that means is that the water that was in them, if you think about a little bit later, the Pharisees say to Jesus, he says, "Why don't your disciples wash their hands like the rest of us?" And different things like this, right? The water that was in these pots had gone through, it had already been out because he tells them to fill them up. But I'll get to that in a second. But it's actually called living water. They've been through a cleansing ceremonial process, put in these pots. Now, you couldn't just dip your hands. You know, some of you have grown up where, you know, when you washed your hands in the sink with soap, you know, everybody washed their hands in the same water, and the water's getting darker and darker and darker. And you're like, does this really clean? I think I'll use more soap. Or maybe my hands are cleaner without going into there. But what they would do with the water pots, somebody would stand there and they would tip the water pots because it had to be running water over your hands. Okay? And the interesting thing about this is that these water pots are made out of stone. Now you got to go back to the book of Leviticus to find out why were these pots that were carrying cleansed water or purified water made out of stone, and you find out that clay or pottery could easily get blemishes on them, and once they were blemished, they were considered unclean. And you go back to the book of Leviticus, and for some reason, it's written that stone is clean. So they would make these water pots for purification out of stone, not pottery, not clay, so that the water inside would not become defiled, but would become cleansed. They actually called the water inside the pots living water. Guess who the living water is? It's Jesus. And so the water, because the water was to be running, and this is living water, they poured out of these pots. So why were they there? They were there for a wedding. They were at a meal. That's what these pots, they cleaned their hands before they had a meal. And so Jesus takes these, listen to this, these pots that were, these stone pots that were established in a religious tradition. And he says, put the water into those stone pots, which are set aside for purification, for cleansing. And he takes that and he says, now dip your ladle, they fill them up, and then he says, take your ladle, put it in there, and take it to the head waiter. And the waiter says, man, the host, you guys did this backwards. Usually, you get everybody looped, and then you serve them the bad stuff, right? Because they don't care anymore what it tastes like after they've had a few too many drinks. But he said, you've saved the best for the last. Now, listen to what is Jesus teaching us in all of this. Listen to this. A little later on, Jesus is breaking the bread and giving the wine. And he says, this wine represents me. You think about going to a wedding. I don't know if you've ever been to a wedding that's 2 hours or 2.5 hours long. I've been to a couple of those. And the part of the wedding, the ceremony, and everybody comes into a church, that's the religious part. But what everybody can't wait for is the party afterwards. And Jesus is saying this. He takes the pots, the stone pots, with the water inside. He's changing it into wine. And he's saying, and this is a significant thing, he's saying, I am the living water. And my blood ought to be a party. I ought to be part of this party. I want to break you from your religious traditions. I want to break you from all these things, mentalities that you thought, and we're going to do that by changing water into wine, first of all, but I want this to be a party. Now, here's the thing. Jesus says this, out of your bellies is going to flow rivers of water. Doesn't that sound exciting? Jesus says, I want your joy to be full and overflowing. John 10:10 says, the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. But I've come to give you life, and to give you life more abundantly, or an abundant life. And so Jesus is at his very first miracle. He's saying, there's a change happening. The change is in my blood. I'm turning the water into wine. And Jesus' blood, when it's spilled out, yes, I can't imagine being there and the grief that those disciples and all his followers felt. But could you imagine, we're accustomed to deal with death, but could you imagine if your best friend came back to life 3 days later, and the joy that would surround that, the excitement that would surround that? And when we talk about the blood of Jesus, even here in communion, there's something about, recognizing that Jesus endured all this and went on the cross and shed his blood. But there's even something more significant, that he rose from the dead. If Jesus never rose from the dead, what we're doing tonight is absolutely in vain and it's worthless. But there is something about Jesus rising from the dead. There is joy in Jesus rising from the dead. There is joy that his blood was spilled. It's that wine that it's talking about, the new wine that's inside of us. New wine in old wineskins, it's going to burst. And so we have to be soft and pliable. That's what this journey of grace is all about. That taking that old wineskin and massaging it and getting it all loose. I'll maybe teach on that one day. And then pouring the wine into the wineskin so it can expand. And man, it's a party. I want you to know Jesus wants us to enjoy life. And when he's changing this water into wine, it's a picture of leaving the religious mindset that you've always thought and bringing me in. I am the living water. I'm going to change this into wine, and you're going to have an abundant life. It's an amazing little story. I just want to leave you with that because there's so many people Christians that, we're so, we're so bound up and tied up. We don't know that we can just let loose and have fun. And that Jesus actually is okay with that. He's okay with us going out to Terry's place and having a potluck and having fun and having games. And he's okay with Rod and myself and Michael taking our kids out swimming last night and having fun and jumping off diving boards, except Rod was too chicken, and doing all these other things and having fun. It's okay to laugh in church. Right, Jamie? Yeah, right, Joanne? Joanne just loves laughing, I know. It's okay. We don't have to be bound up. Jesus came to set us free.